Hi, students and teachers. I would like to begin today's religion lesson with some magic tricks. Does that sound like fun? I hope you said yes. Okay, so for my first trick, I'm going to take this normal $10 bill that you see, and I'm going to make it go upside down. Okay, so you see first that it's upright. Okay, so I'm going to start folding it. Not gonna do anything that you can't see. Okay. Alright, it's folded. It was still upright. Okay, so I'm gonna start unfolding it now. Okay. No trick photography. That bill turned upside down. Ta-da! Alright, thank you. Thank you very much. Alright, for my next magic trick. This is a normal, solid, sturdy pencil for doing your schoolwork. I'm sure you're very familiar with those pencils at school. So I'm going to take this hard wooden pencil and magically turn it into a floppy, rubbery one, okay? Let's see. Magic. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, these are obviously not the best magic tricks in the world because I am not a magician. When I was a kid, a man named David Copperfield had a reputation for being one of the best magicians, and he had a TV special where he made the Statue of Liberty disappear. Now, if you've seen the Statue of Liberty, you know it's a really, really big thing. So that was probably the coolest magic trick I had ever seen because he seemed to make the whole thing disappear on TV. Now, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but magic is not real, okay? Anyone who does magic, even if it's something really impressive like making the Statue of Liberty disappear, they are doing what is called an illusion. They are making it look like it happened, but it doesn't really happen. So, for the $10 trick, what wasn't very good, and you probably figured out, is that once I folded it, I just unfolded it from the back instead of the front, and that made it turn upside down. For the pencil trick, you've probably even done that yourself when you're just goofing around at your desk. You just sort of shake it in a way that makes it trick your eyes into looking like it's rubbery. So, every magic trick there is has a logical explanation. It may be a very complicated one, but there's always a very specific thing that a magician has learned to do and that they've practiced over and over again to get it right so that you think it's really happening. Today we're going to talk about the miracles of Jesus. Miracles are things that might on the surface seem like magic tricks. They seem to defy the rules of nature. And much like magic tricks, they definitely don't seem like things that should be able to happen. But they are definitely different. When Jesus performs a miracle, it was real. There was no complicated illusion, no learning how to trick the audience by practicing it over and over again to get it right. Jesus did things that were supernatural, things only someone with God's power could do. Jesus' miracles are found in all four of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. There were two big categories that these miracles would fall under: healings and changing nature. Healings involved doing something good for a person. Changing nature involved doing something to control or manipulate a thing, like water or fish or the weather. We'll look at several examples of each of these. First, the healings. Jesus would heal people in three ways. He would cure something that was wrong with them, like if they couldn't see or if they couldn't walk. He would cast out demons from someone who was possessed. And he would bring someone back to life that had died. The nature category doesn't break down quite as conveniently into categories, so I'll just give you some of the big examples. He took water and turned it into wine. He made a storm calm down. He walked on top of the water. He turned just a few fish and loaves of bread into enough food to feed thousands of people. And if you remember from 2 weeks ago when he rounded up the disciples, he made a huge catch of fish appear when there had been no fish for hours. We'll talk more about some of these miracles, but first, let's ask an important question. Why did Jesus perform miracles? What do you think were some of the reasons that he did these supernatural things during his ministry here on earth? I'd love to start by hearing your answers. Talk about this as a class. Why do you feel that Jesus performed miracles? Healing people, raising the dead, walking on water, any of these things. What were the reasons he had for doing them? Go ahead and pause the video now, and I'll be right back in a few minutes. So, I bet you came up with some really good answers. They may be the same as mine, they may be different, but here are 3 reasons I came up with for why Jesus would do miracles. First, he loved people and he wanted to meet their needs. He had compassion on those who were blind, paralyzed, sick, or diseased. He wanted to show love to them by healing them. Often these were spontaneous decisions. They weren't planned out or prepared, just a result of someone seeking him out and asking him to help. On behalf of God, Jesus wanted to let us know that he weeps with us and he understands our pain. Jesus wanted to make a difference in people's lives for the better. Secondly, he wanted to show us that he was the Son of God. Miracles affirmed his identity. They helped people believe in him because they saw what he could do, things that only God could make happen. Then third, he wanted to show us what was yet to come. The perfect world that waits for us in heaven has no pain and no suffering. So for brief moments of his time on earth, Jesus could give us a glimpse of what that future paradise would look like. Okay, so for our lesson today, we're going to look at 3 miracles together. We're going to start with a video. Today I'm using scenes from actual movies with real actors instead of animation. This is one of my favorite moments in Scripture where Jesus finds that a lot of people are gathering and he needs something to feed them with.
Jesus looked around and saw that a large crowd was coming to him.
Where can we buy enough food to feed all these people?
He said this to test Philip. Actually, he already knew what he would do.
For everyone to have even a little, it would take more than 200 silver coins to buy enough bread.
Another one of his disciples, Andrew, who was Simon Peter's brother, said,
"There is a boy here who has 5 loaves of barley bread and 2 fish. But they will certainly not be enough for all these people."
Make the people sit down.
There was a lot of grass there, so all the people sat down. There were about 5,000 men. Jesus took the bread, gave thanks to God, and distributed to the people who were sitting there. He did the same with the fish. And they all had as much as they wanted. When they were all full, he said to his disciples,
Gather the pieces left over. Let us not waste a bit.
So they gathered them all and filled 12 baskets with the pieces left over from the 5 barley loaves which the people had eaten. Seeing this miracle that Jesus had performed, the people there said, "Surely this is the prophet who was to come into the world."
So I have 2 things to point out about this scene. First, it's often referred to as the feeding of the 5,000. But if you notice, they said in the clip there were 5,000 men. So the women and children were not even included in that count. So you got to figure there is way more than 5,000 people that were fed by just this small amount of food. Secondly, one of the most important people in this story is the little boy. He volunteered to help by giving Jesus his lunch. Jesus could have changed the rocks or the grass into food if he wanted to, but he gave that little boy an opportunity to make a decision. It was a decision that the boy made out of love and out of sacrifice, and that to me is a very important part of this miracle. Jesus takes what the boy has and makes it multiply into so much more. He wants to do that with us as well. When we offer our time, our talents, ourselves to God, God takes that and multiplies it. He uses it to do amazing things that we wouldn't be able to do on our own. Okay, for our next example, we've got a story of Jesus healing someone, or rather, 2 someones. I'll be reading it to you from the Jesus Storybook Bible. And the story, if you've got one of these, is called A Little Girl and a Poor Frail Lady, and it's taken from Luke chapter 8. Okay, there's the picture. There was once a little girl who didn't get out of bed one morning, or the next, or the next. In fact, she didn't get out of bed for a whole month. She was very sick, and no one knew how to make her better. Jairus was her daddy, and he loved her. One day he was sitting by her bed, holding her hand, wishing there was something he could do. "I know," he said. He jumped to his feet, put on his coat, kissed his daughter, ran down the steps, past the servants, out of the house, through the gates, along the road, into the town, up the steps, and into the temple. He fought his way through all the people until at last he found who he was looking for. "Jesus," he said, falling at Jesus' feet. "My daughter," he pleaded, "please." But he didn't need to beg, because before he'd even finished speaking, Jesus reached out his hand and helped him up. "I'll come at once," Jesus said. Jairus' eyes filled with tears. Jesus was coming. It would be all right. In those days, of course, they didn't have ambulances, so they had to go by foot. Jesus' helpers knew that he would heal the sick girl, but they must hurry. If Jesus didn't get there soon, it would be too late. But everyone was in the way, hustling and bustling, jostling and pressing, pushing and shoving, squishing and squashing. The disciples ran ahead, forcing back the crowd. Suddenly, Jesus stopped. His friends looked back. What was he doing? "Who touched me?" Jesus asked, because he felt power go out of him. "Me," said a frail lady, looking down at the ground because she was ashamed. The poor lady had been sick for 12 years, and she had to get well. She knew if she only touched Jesus' coat, she would be healed. So she touched his coat, and instantly she was well. "We don't have time," Jesus' friends said. But Jesus always had time. He reached out his hands and gently lifted her head. He looked into her eyes and smiled. "You believed," he said, wiping a tear from her eye, "and now you are well." Just then Jairus' servant rushed up to Jairus. "It's too late," he said breathlessly. "Your daughter is dead." Jesus turned to Jairus. "It's not too late," Jesus said. "Trust me." At Jairus' house, everyone was crying, but Jesus said, "I'm going to wake her up." Everyone laughed at him because they knew she was dead. Jesus walked into the little girl's bedroom, and there, lying in the corner in the shadows, was the still little figure. Jesus sat on the bed and took her pale hand. "Honey," he said, "it's time to get up." And he reached down into death and gently brought the little girl back to life. The little girl woke up, rubbed her eyes as if she'd just had a good night's sleep, and leaped out of bed. Jesus threw open the shutters and sunlight flooded the dark room. "Hungry?" Jesus asked. She nodded. Jesus called to her family, "Bring this little girl some breakfast." Jesus helped and healed many people like this. He made blind people see. He made deaf people hear. He made lame people walk. Jesus was making the sad things come untrue. He was mending God's broken world. So, a few things about these miracles. First of all, the woman who touched Jesus' coat and was healed. This is really cool because most of the time he healed someone by touching them or sometimes by speaking to them. But this woman was healed just by touching his coat. Notice he said, "You believed and now you are well." So many times Jesus talks about how believing in him or having faith in him is the key to being healed. They had to take that step of faith, trusting that Jesus had the power to change them for the better. Now let's talk about Jairus' daughter. Bringing someone back to life after they have died is a pretty amazing miracle. Jesus did this for her, and he also did this a few other times for a young man from the town of Nain and for a friend of his named Lazarus. But most of all, Jesus did this himself as well. When Jesus is killed, he is raised back to life. His own resurrection is the most important miracle of all, and we'll learn all about that one in a later lesson. We've got one more miracle to cover, and it's about the disciples in a boat during the storm. And it's about Jesus walking on water. Here's the clip.
Who do you think I am? The Son of God.
So, to recap what happened, Peter, after they see Jesus out on the water, gets out of the boat and starts walking to Jesus. Remember how we mentioned taking that first step of faith and trusting in Jesus' power? Well, Peter literally takes a step of faith. He gets out of the boat and onto the water. And he was doing just fine too, until he stopped long enough to have a little doubt about what was happening. He looked around and he realized what was going on, and he started to sink. Jesus reaches in and he pulls Peter up out of the water. He's disappointed that Peter started to doubt, but I'd like to point out that Peter was the only disciple willing to take that first step out of the boat. So that was definitely a bold, courageous, faith-filled decision that Peter makes. I hope you enjoyed learning about some of Jesus' miracles today. There are plenty of other ones that we didn't get to talk about, and some of those will likely come up in our future lessons. Now, some of you might be asking, do miracles still happen today, Mr. Sandifer? And I don't know the answer to that. Some people would answer yes, some people would answer no. I guess it just depends on who you ask. Well, what I do know for certain, if there are any baseball fans out there, you might know that 5 years ago, Illinois' own Chicago Cubs won the World Series after having gone a long time without having won it. So if that's any indication, then yeah, I guess miracles still happen. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.